Here we go. I was just showing Sharon on camera here. I'll share it too. My daughter had this made. It's a little taco. My now gone little dog that
You now have an emotional taco.
Still, yeah. So
I also have an emotional taco.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. That's a good emotional taco. Well, hello. Happy Monday.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Project Failure Files, the series for anyone and everyone who manages people, projects, processes, all the things for a living. I'm Sharon Weaver, CEO of Smarter Consulting.
And I am Christian Buckley, founder of Collab Talk, and welcome to another episode of the series where Sharon and I explore project topics from the perspective of what not to do. In each episode, we talk about the common pitfalls, share personal stories and experiences, and explore strategies and best practices to help you to be successful.
In this episode, we are talking about the hot mess of reporting and how easily you can make the mistake of agreeing to custom reporting for each and every stakeholder.
I have been in that hot mess many different times, or I've inherited. That's more to the case there. Inherited the hot mess, and then go back and be like, yeah, I know the promises that were made. It's like, but we're spending more than half of our time cleaning up. We're caught in this endless loop of status reporting, and which causes us to then start neglecting the actual project responsibilities. Been there, done that. I've had to clean up on several occasions. It's never a fun conversation to go back and say, yeah, we're going to be killing this. Like, no. And they complain, and 99% of the time, they never look at it anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of sounds like this is going up against like one of our other topics that we've covered, the mistake of treating everything the same, like treating all the projects the same. Because there is something nice to having consistency, but that's not what we're really talking about here. This really comes down to having a very clear definition of project scope, a clear outline of the timeline, all the deliverables.
Responsibilities, accountabilities. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Who owns what and when, right?
All the important metrics for success.
That's the sticking point right there. Like, what are the metrics, the organizational metrics? And yet projects might be different. The results, the output, the ROI for the company might be very different in those projects. But I keep using this word, Sharon, like if you have that clinical approach to it, like remove the personality from it. It's like every project has a beginning, has an end. You've got the resources on there. You've got the time, the people, the processes, the budget, like all those things, which are standard, the key measurements for the success of the project, the customer relationships, kind of all those different pieces. You need to have a consistent way of looking across all those things. Otherwise, how are you going to know if, like, can I add another project? Or we're doing like, I'm thinking more like a manufacturing system. Yeah, we can at the end of the month, we can complete 5 projects a month. Is that good? Could we do 7? 10? I don't know. Do we need more people? Like, how do you know if you don't get yourself organized? I guess that's my point.
But you don't understand. I'm special and I'm unique and I need you to do things for me.
Yeah, but that's the way that you're going to get people burned out. I mean, I've been burned out. I've had PMs that have come to me like, I just can't take this. Like can I switch projects working with this team? It is an inefficiency trap. You'll spend all your time chasing people for status updates and building out reports and dashboards that they aren't going to be using as much as they say they're going to be using for that. Is that really going to help you deliver? That's the question.
No, I mean, there's absolutely a balance. There's a really good balance of enough information to make sure you know what's going on and that you're on track and that you're delivering the right thing, but not so much that you're spending every waking second focused on reporting and documentation, right? There's a nice balance in there. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And I think, too, to be able to go back and say, when somebody has a good idea, and I'll just say, hey, does this apply to across the board? Should we be doing this for everyone? Then it makes sense. When you find that you're doing exceptions instead of standardize, like that's the trap. But should be a great conversation as always. And as with every episode, please feel free to comment throughout the episode, share your experiences, any great examples that you have, suggestions for us as well. So we love talking about this stuff. And I will also throw in again, I know we need to take another step and finish some things on the site, but if you go out to the website, you can sign up for the newsletter. You can leave other comments out there. projectfailurefiles.com. It's up. It's there. Should probably add a QR code.
Get on, sign up. Sign up.
Yeah, sign
Come
up.
on, get on the list.
So, all right. Yeah.
All right, you ready? Let's get started with some definitions.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I think of reporting overload, again, the way that you're doing reporting could just land very different. But I just think of like the project plan. You got your budget. You might have the methodology that you follow might have a formal kickoff and milestones meetings, or hey, this stakeholder group wants meetings weekly, but this other project where they have all those other same components, but they're fine with meeting monthly because it's a different project. It doesn't have the sense of urgency around that. And then, like I always talk about my, my 4-up, my one sheet that has the high level, that has like everything that was accomplished, everything that was done, all of the like the asks, all of the risks and the plan for that, and so it has, and then the details of like what's next, the next steps, so that very quickly. Any executive, any stakeholder can look at that project. Is it all the detail? No, you've got all the plans. You got everything behind that. But you have this one page where they can look. And I love like adding green arrows up, yellow arrows to the side, red arrows down. So visually, like a dashboard, you can see what is the progress. Now, of course, that's having it in a slide or in a paper handout, whatever you're doing for those stakeholders. I mean, it's great when you have a dashboard and using a spreadsheet, using a chart that you can digitally have all these things. So you can actually look at the trend lines of the project, like how often, how much variance is there from our baseline of where we thought we'd be. The main definition, I think we kind of addressed it in the intro there, but is that, you can't always have that one version of a report that fits every single project. We get that, but you should be able to have the common denominators of the projects, of who owns it, what's the ETA of delivery, who are the key stakeholders, kind of all those different components, and then make minor adjustments to that, but it should be standardized. Like if Sharon, I mean, jump in anytime, but
no, I'm sitting here thinking you're giving such great information. I'm just sitting here thinking, no, you don't understand, Christian. Our team has gone agile and lean. So we don't need any of that. Like just none of it, because it's agile and lean. So we don't document anything at all. We just do.
There's that problem too. But then how do you hold people accountable if you don't have that? I mean, there needs to be, think of it almost like in some, companies I've worked for where you had to be regularly audited, like go in and look at where are we, what projects do we have, especially if you're in certain industries, like that's the reality. That it could be spot audits. It's a monthly, quarterly, definitely annual basis.
I remember that. Yep. I remember when we had audits and you'd like have to pull up every single thing, and then the auditor would sit at your desk and review it all with you. I was like, whoa.
So my complaint, back from my project management days, and we didn't have a lot of the tools, because I was a PM back when, Fire was new. We had this thing called the wheel.
Dirt was invented. We played outside.
I remember the product launch for Dirt. Yes. No, but when you're spending, my complaint was always, I spent more time chasing people for updates and to get accurate data. They give me they don't respond until end of day on Friday. And then some BS number that doesn't actually represent, what did you actually put into that? I
don't know. Do you know what my trick was? Here's my trick for years and years and years. I even had an interview question one time.
Physical threats? Is that the trick?
I had a bowl of candy on my desk. All kinds of candy. And if you don't know this, I worked in software development for a very long time. Software developers really like sugar a lot. So I had a big bowl of candy on my desk, and inevitably they would walk by my desk and they would eye that big bowl of candy that was sitting right next to the door, and they knew it was there. And just about the time they'd stick their hand in that bowl of candy, I'd be like, hey, why are you standing here?
Yeah.
You want to give me a quick update? And they'd be like,
Yeah.
yes.
But I know that there's a lot of tools that are out there that are like kind of in context. There's different ways of reporting in and different depending on who you're working for. I started my career before my tech career, before my first salary job. I was a runner for a law firm, and I learned a lot about the developing partnerships, getting lectured to by senior, attorneys as I was helping them out on things, working late or picking them up from dropping their vehicles off for repair, and then I'd have to go pick them up. Again, I did what I was told. I was the gopher for the office. But that whole perspective of daily time tracking down to 15-minute increments, billable time. The importance of content life cycles and reporting and being able to go back and justify all expenses and time spent to clients around things. Like, again, if you're not familiar with like that level of detail, just go find an attorney friend and shadow them.
And also, where do you bill the time for writing down your billable time? That was always my question. I'm like, I spend 10 hours a week writing down my billable time. Where do I bill that to?
Right. Well, it's usually, well, again, depending on how your company works, it's built into the pricing for some of the overtime, but you also like adjust the hours. Like an 8-hour workday is really 9 hours, and you're paying for 9 hours, but that's the overhead component of that. But back to reporting, I mean, different stakeholders have different expectations, formats, reporting cadences. And the way from a PMO perspective is that like every project has the title, the timeline, the budget, the kind of all of the components, the regular documentation. And we say like, here's what we provide out at a portfolio view. So all of the projects. And then there's the specifics to each individual project, and the project manager that owns that then has their conversations. So going back to my ideal model of that 4-up simple, that front page, that's the status. And yes, that's usually in a dashboard, so it's not on the document. But then you have everything that's unique, that's nuanced below that. But when I would go into a project, and I actually, great client years ago in the pharmaceuticals business, I've used this example. They had, so they built, their product company was doing like makeup and lotions and stuff. They had hundreds of products that were at different phases of testing, through trials, got approved for whatever, because if you're going to put it on skin, it has to go through different stamps of approval for government. But they had for those hundreds of products, so they were a SharePoint customer, they had the exact same layout for every one of the teams for those products, so that if executives got moved around into different parts of the company, you got moved over, exactly where the timelines are, the project notes, the call logs, like whatever it is, meeting minutes, the approved list of things, the approval process and workflow, like all of that, it looked identical in hundreds of teams. And it's one of the reasons why that right there is what got me excited about the early version of SharePoint, which was really ugly, but very functional and supported this model. And even then, this was before we had templates and things, but to go and build out hundreds of sites following that same pattern, it was incredible for this kind of organization.
Yeah, I think like we said, there's a balance. It's, you do have to have there are certain things you have to have. There are certain pieces of information you have to keep track of. There are certain things you need to know. And I think, when we talk about this, we're not saying the failure is, doing reporting or spending time on reporting. It's how can you be efficient and get the information that you need to get and not spending so much time on busy work that you're not actually getting anything done on the project. You're not doing the other work. And to be fair, sometimes you get certain personalities that just really get jazzed by filling out a spreadsheet. And that's totally okay. And a lot of PMs, tend to have that personality type. The problem is you can get so lost in creating all of this documentation that you forget about the people you're serving, the resources, the people you're working with, and you're so caught up in this that you're not making forward progress.
I know some people would say it's like, well, that's part of the job is to go and do the reporting, because it's your job is to keep the project, like scope and sized and on budget and on schedule and all of those things. Yeah, but there's the reporting aspect of that and communicating that out. So yes, we're not saying that this isn't critical, and maybe it is 50% of the role is just the reporting, the communication piece. When it is closer to 80-90% of your time, then it's a problem. Like, you find the balance, but I think people that do this, again, my experience is that they recognize when reporting has crossed over into inefficiency. Because at the end of the day, especially now, as most salaried PMs, even if you're contract, you're on there, it's not like you can do overtime around it. It's expected that you do all that and your individual contributor tasks. Whatever that you need to do, and chase people down and then pull all the reporting together, kind of all of these different pieces, and then start to do that increasingly with more and more projects. I don't know what the numbers are these days for the average number of projects. It was something like 3.5 to 5 projects per PM average. Like, I remember back in my PM days when I only had 3 to 5 projects, and then suddenly there's a dozen.
Early, right. A young junior PM might have a couple, 3 to 5. And then once you kind of get going, it's more like 10 or 15. And then if you're doing a really good job, you get like 20.
Right. Well, you got to just figure out, one of the things, it's a great discussion around automation. Like, what data could be automated? Like, instead of chasing people for data, by having an automation, like through a project management things where people are having to input daily or weekly, but they're accountable, responsible for their inputs. If it's not updated, like, I go as the PM and I do a push like, hey, we're getting ready to report. I'm like, make sure your stats are up to date. And you can even have the system flag if there's somebody that has unchanged data since the last time reporting, like, it points to them. It's like, here is what the best data that we have now of where we are. And yeah, we're slipping a week. No, we don't have these 2 people in engineering that have reported back and they've got all the same notifications, everybody else. And so then the VP can call up those 2 individuals. Like, why have you not updated? Like, what's going on? But so having some level of automation helps with all of that. And so then it's a matter of like, what can we automate through all of this?
Well, and I think, here's where we get into failure files is I agree. I think automating things is great, as long as, and we've talked about this in the past, as long as there's an audit point in there, as long as there's a checkpoint in there, because one of the things that I see people do, especially in this space, they turn everything on automation and then they just don't ever go check to make sure that the right information's in there. And they just assume that everybody's going to do the thing they're supposed to and that everything is going to go through. And then they just can be hands off and let it all happen automatically. And truthfully, it's that what trust but verify, right? You trust that people are doing the things they're supposed to be doing, but have those verification or validation steps built in to make sure that what happened was the correct information.
So Sharon, I'm going to share something. I think this is going to shock you.
I'm waiting.
I want you to prepare. Just grip the handles of the chair there. So I don't think the automation, like those components, those metrics, like that's the problem. When you talk about like when it gets into the excessive range, I know this is going to blow you away, but it's people.
What? No.
People that are the problem.
No.
Yeah. So when you go, and again, you might be working with a stakeholder and they may be a senior executive, but they're giving you like ad hoc requests for customized reporting, and you're getting multiple stakeholders in the same project that are asking for different diverging.
That never happens.
Bear with me.
Okay.
Again,
okay.
I don't think it's as uncommon as you think, Sharon. But if you don't set those clear expectations about like, look, this is what we're tracking. This is why we're tracking these pieces. This is what we're centrally doing. Like, to ask questions and know the answers. Like, I started to do that where I had in my notes, and I almost feel like a White House communications person, open up the binder and be like, well, you asked these other questions. It's not part of the main status report, but by the way, here's the answers to these questions, kind of things, but you must submit them in writing beforehand, at least 2 days.
Oh my gosh. And Copilot comes up with so many great questions and action items that even like, I'm like trying to do all the things. And then I'm like, I go to Copilot, summarize this meeting and give me the action items, or give me some questions that I can ask. I'm like, whoa, oh, hey, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that.
And I've shared too that a couple companies I worked for where I went back and I told I forbade my team from making changes and agreeing to anything without clearing it through me. I said, make me the bad guy. So I'd have these stakeholders come angry at me and I would say like, all right, is this request? And I would say like, look, here's the process that I go through. Is the metric that you're asking for, is it critical to the delivery of the project? Yes or no around that? It might be. And again, there's going to be variance to this.
Yeah. Why do you need it?
Right. What decisions will be made based on this information? So is it critical to making decisions around risks and opportunities over the course of that schedule? Who needs it? How frequently they're asking for that? Is it a one-time ask? Is it something that maybe on a quarterly, this is a year-long project and quarterly we want to do kind of expanded view of what's happening, or just review it and have the answers in the postmortem once we're done? And then can it be automated or consolidated? And this goes back to what we've talked about in past episodes of continually review. Like, is this sufficient? Is it efficient? Are we effective? Is it giving us what we need around all of these things? And in my experience is that when we find something like, we should be doing this thing, it's usually the answer is, all of our projects need the same thing. All right, let's modify it.
Exactly.
Standardized view of the major drivers of information. I always refer to it. There's the project view of the individual project, and there's the portfolio view over all of those things. And most reporting, it needs to be filed into a portfolio view, and you look at those common denominators, and then you deal with the exceptions, the things. But it's much smaller scope. I'm off my soapbox on it. I know it's as you can tell, like it's a point of frustration, and it's actually this topic that got me into information management systems and collaboration, that got me into the Microsoft ecosystem down the SharePoint path. So I came from project and portfolio management, building PMOs into information management systems because of this bloat around reporting and collaboration and looking for a better way of doing it.
Well, and it's really funny because, I experienced this, throughout my entire career, and I finally landed in a job where I was actually managing the SharePoint side of it. And so many project managers and executives were complaining about this exact thing in a very large company I worked for, that they decided to get together and invest a very large amount of money to work on a project where we got to use one of the old versions of Project Server along with some SQL stuff and make some cubes and throw it up on a SharePoint site, and basically created this custom portfolio view of all the projects and rolled them all up. Because like you said, everybody kind of wanted things, but what we really realized is that everybody had the same problem. And so when everybody has the same problem, it's a good indicator that if you invest for something for everyone, it's going to solve everybody's problems. And the people who don't realize it's a problem will be like, that's great. Yeah.
I would use in my team's own defense. I use the phrase a lot of like, I would be like, hey, we're same team, timeout, same team. Like we're working, like you're getting angry about this. Like, look at what we're trying to do and all the other things. Like we want to give you everything that you're asking for.
Yep.
But what is actually critical to drive towards this?
Yeah. What was really neat is that, so as a part of being able to be part of that project, that was, I got to work with enterprise level people before that, but this was a really large global company. And for the first time, I really got to see the heads from all these different areas come and sit down at a table and express, here's the pain that I'm dealing with, and here's the things that I want. And what was really nice is we got to do this really great enterprise architecture requirements, project where we got to talk to every single leader and get their needs and pull something together. And I think, when you talk about this being critical and this being important, I think when we talk about failure fires, I have seen so many companies and so many places that discount that. They're like, no, they all want different things. In fact, I worked at a different company. Every VP wanted something different. And they're like, well, we just want to let them do their own thing. We're not going to ever force them to like align and do the same thing. Then I went to a different company where they were like, everybody's doing something different, but we really want to streamline this so that it's more efficient for everybody. They got everybody to sit down. We helped everybody understand, like, let's all be on the same page, like you said. And when we did that, not only was it amazing for them, but it became a business differentiator for the company to be able to go out to their clients and say, this is how we do things. And people are like, wow, that's really neat that you're doing it that way.
Well, and I know that this is, again, something we have covered many, many times, but having that structure, having a methodology builds trust in the organization. So when you go and say, like, look, here are the key components. Here's what we have. Here's the dashboard we have. Your project is now in here. Here's the data. You can see it. You can see its prioritization against other, like, whatever the factors in those things. It means that we reduce duplication. It means that we improve the consistency of the output. It minimizes errors. And I love this aspect of it because I've worked with a couple companies where we went in and developed, they wanted to treat the project management office as a not as a cost center, but as a revenue component internally. And so we're basically doing chargebacks and with funny money in there. And not that I ever recommend like that model. I think there's a lot of problems with it. But the point there is that we could then start to identify and put a cost around exceptions. And when you do that and people understand how much it'd be great if I had this as well.
Wouldn't it be nice if?
Right. And they go through that, but it's not actually necessary. Be like, here's what that actually costs. They ask for those exceptions less and less. They get the information that they need. I'm not saying say no to people for exceptions. There will always be exceptions.
For the low price of
that. But again, you might even just do that as an experiment for a while. But it helps stakeholders to really understand and align around that methodology, that structure, having that shared understanding of where all of the projects are and in the mix. And, the whole agile, the stand-up meeting, the whiteboard model, and here it is, and it changes throughout the day, and every day, requiring a team to like, look, here's the priorities, here's the project, here's the ETA, here's the stakeholders, all of that. And as I've shared in past episodes, and I know you've done the exact same thing. I've done it at multiple companies, but then people come to you and say, I urgently need this request, to be like, let's go look at the board. Let's look at the process. Like, I understand you. Is it more important than this one? No. Is it more important than this one? No. Is it more like you have that conversation? And then they're like, all right. I said, if you can give me more time, more people, more money, I can adjust this list. But these are the constraints that I have, the people, the time, the prioritization. Tell me how I could change this. Let's go talk with the owners of the other projects that you're bumping down, get approval. And it's happened many times, usually by the most senior people, get to push everybody else around.
And when you don't have this, right? When you don't have reporting in a streamlined fashion. When we talk about reporting, we're not talking about I need to print a report anymore. Like in the old days, it was printing reports. We're talking about a way to know what's going on at a project level, at a portfolio level, like at a day-to-day level. If you don't have some sort of systematized processes that are in place for reporting, what you face is nobody knows what's going on. And so like your point of how many people, how many stakeholders come in and say, well, I need you to drop everything and do this. And I've worked with these teams where they literally will call the developers and be like, hey, I need this fixed right now. Well, that poor developer is not going to be like, no, bye, right? Yeah. They're going to be like, sure, I'll do that. They take a note, they stop what they're doing, they start working on something else. And what ends up happening is absolute and utter chaos. So if you want to note out the project failure files, don't have systematized reporting, don't have it written down anywhere, don't have it organized, because here's what's going to happen. Your stakeholders are going to go directly to your resources. Your resources are going to stop doing what they're doing so they can help them. And the next thing you know, you're going to be like, hey, where's that project? And your resource is going to be like, well, I stopped it 87 times this week when so-and-so called, because there's no way for anybody to know where they're at on a project.
Just came out with a new topic from what you just said there, but don't document your process. That's a big failure. Yeah. So we'll add that one to the list, but that's the whole thing here is that, even the other side of that mistake of having, yes, dashboards, it's everything digitized. They're using the tools. you can't just throw technology at it and think it's going to be solved if you don't have the methodology, the structure in place.
No, you don't understand. This software is going to change everything.
Right. Well, AI will just clean up and organize
It'll do
all
of it for you.
Right.
All
It'll
of
just
it.
do it. So you
All
just
of
turn
it.
it on and then walk away.
Yeah. Fire all your employees today. Get AI. It's going to do everything for you.
It's the instant pot of metrics.
Remember when they used to say that about SharePoint? SharePoint's going to do everything for you.
Of course. Well, the new version that's coming out will then solve all that. Yeah, I know. It's the new version, not the current version. It's garbage. I hate this. No, the next version fixes it all. So don't worry about it. It's only 6 to 24 months away. Yeah. So, I mean, but standardizing templates around things. So again, even to talk about it now, it sounds like adding bureaucracy and layers, and people aren't doing the paper-based reporting.
You're saying have something. We're not saying have 400 billion topics and 400 million templates. Have something.
Right. And it could just be a very simple tool, and people could have email that goes out with an automated, scripts that run that says, hey, Sharon, you own these. And again, automate it so that it only goes to those people with the tasks that they own, gives them their view of it and say, how much time do you spend on each of these tasks over the course of the day, and then send it in. It's an automatic email that then feeds into those systems, which rolls up to the dashboard and automates all of that. So yeah, that is the direction. I mean, I started working in 2000. Yeah, I think in 2000, where I became friends with the CEO of a brand new acronym called SaaS, Software as a Service,
Sharon
Project Management, Portfolio Management Solution provider, and became friends with him. Still connected to him out there. Thank you, LinkedIn and Facebook, for some reason. But Damien, who's out there, who was awesome, and had a couple clients with their product, but started that idea of everything rolls up, gives you the portfolio view across all the various projects, and things that I went and attempted to do with Project Server with this other large client, and that had SharePoint on the front end back in the 2003 SharePoint era, folks.
I think there's some people using that still.
I know. And it just, trying to build these clients understood that what they wanted was not the time tracking part of it. You could do that. You could do spreadsheets. You could do that manually. But they wanted a decision support system. They wanted to understand how the movements of the business were impacting all of these things that they were trying to deliver on. And that's what the standardization, the centralization gets you.
But I think that's really, that's an important point, is that you have to understand, what is reporting doing for you, and how can we make it efficient, and how can we get everybody to understand. All we want to do is make sure that everybody knows what's going on, not keep them from knowing the things that are we're not hiding stuff from them. We're just trying to streamline it so that we don't have to spend all day filling out custom things for people.
I know people are probably asking, well, how do you do this? We're in this hot mess of we've got people running and everybody's doing something different, and they've got their personal relationships with the various stakeholders, which is great until one of your PMs then decides to move on from the company, and you lose all the institutional knowledge. The more that you can standardize, centralize, you start by identifying the most common reporting requests, consolidate those things. Okay, you're asking for this, you're asking for this. That's the exact same thing. You get different labels on it, different names for it. It's the same thing. You build out that model and you go back and say, with everything you're used to today, if we gave you this, would that fit your need? And anything that says almost, and I also need these 2 data points, which are irrelevant to everyone else, but to my project. All right, here's your 2 exceptions to this, but we agreed to the standardize. And then it's a matter of going and selling that to your stakeholders, educate them on the value of the shared reporting, leverage project management platforms. You build it yourself, use something like SharePoint, go out there and do it. If you've got Project Online, you can use Power BI. I mean, we were getting so many, we had some automated tool. I think it was internally built. We ended up just doing everything manually in a shared spreadsheet and surfacing the spreadsheet through SharePoint. It gave the dashboard, but it allowed us to do all of the funky things that we wanted to do with color coding for status and all that kind of stuff. Because the tech, this was 20 years ago, wasn't yet ready. So this is the early days of SharePoint, and we would just surface the Excel spreadsheet as our dashboard, and people loved it.
Yeah, I think as long as people are using tools that make sense and that they can get what they need out of it, that's really the important part.
How you communicate it is so critical to this. So, I mean, if you're selling it, and especially if you get an executive senior leader who understands, yes, this is a hot mess. It's where we started. Like, thank you for working with us on that term. We all agree it's a hot mess.
Well, and 9 times out of 10, when there's a hot mess and there's a pain point, maybe they're doing too much, but at the end of the day, whatever that leader or stakeholder or whoever it is that's complaining, they're not getting what they need, right? It doesn't even matter if there's too much or not enough. They're not getting what they need, and you need to go back and focus on that.
Yeah, and sometimes, look, you realize this is where you use your skills as a project manager, your negotiation, to be very tactical and push back on what might be unreasonable, unnecessary reporting requests. Like, hey, look, I'd love to provide this. I always love, like, when you have a manager, like the PMO lead or the director that's over like that side of the business, whatever it is, that says, make me the bad guy. So you as a PM can go and have the conversations as a lower down person, say, look, I'd love to report this, but we need to align on the format that works for everyone. So this is outside the scope of that, and I can do it. And if you are attempting to show, like, here's the percentage of my time that I'm dealing with your exceptions, here's the actual cost to the company of your exceptions, and then you get leadership to say, it's like, well, this it's an interesting stat. We say this director or this division, they are like 40% more expensive than anyone else because they have all these exceptions. Here's the kinds of things. And that might then raise the eyebrows of some of the leadership team, to like, what's going on? Why do you need that? What's the justification? So you are clinical, you remove yourself from the passions of the topic and say, does this make sense for the business? This is what the cost is. You're asking me for this. This is what it will take to deliver that for you. Yes or no? This is what you want.
And you might have to either put your BA hat on, or you might have to bring in a BA to help understand, because, the PM's job is not a lot of times to have to deal with what they need. That should already be defined. They should just be kind of following the process. And in smaller places, sometimes you kind of got to wear both hats, and that's okay. But sometimes you got to put your BA hat on, or you got to bring a BA in and say, okay, let's talk about what we actually need so we can work on changing the process. So this is one thing. Like, if you just ignore that problem as a PM and you're just like, oh, I'll just do whatever they want and be a pushover, then, a lot of times that will cause you it'll make the hot mess kind of flare up a little bit worse.
Yeah. Yeah. So ultimately we're talking about, you need to have stakeholder trust. Part of it is the reporting. Like, look, there's transparency. Here's what's going on. We're doing our best as we can to get this data that's out to you. So if you have those clear, concise reports, highlight the exceptions, the other things, so that others would say, look, I'm spending, this amount of time dealing with these exceptions. Let the other stakeholders that are like, wait a second, we standardized. That was part of the effort. You're doing this stuff. What's the value of this? Again, there's ways to peer pressure, gently, tactfully, but some of these requests ultimately you're trying to guard your bandwidth. You're like, look, they're going back to your words. There needs to be a balance. Mm-hmm. Too much time of reporting means less executing on actual project responsibilities. And so, are we prioritizing administrative overhead over real work? That's not real work. You making the point here. I want to be careful there, because it's super important work. I just don't want to do it.
Well, the question is, are you doing what needs to be done, or are you doing more effort than is required? And it doesn't matter what topic we're talking about, right? This is, if from a generic perspective, back to the whole clinical conversation, back to the efficiency conversation, I don't care what you're doing. The most valuable thing gets watered down and less valuable if you're spending too much time in an area where you've gone beyond a certain level of deliverability. It is valuable to do this, but it becomes less valuable when you do too much of it and you take that time away from other things that may have a higher their priority.
Right. Well, that's why I think having ways that you can get past that, and be tactful in how you do it. But is, again, it's about trust. You can set a standard around, hey, here's the cadence to our reporting. Every Monday morning, you will have a refreshed dashboard, or we're doing it twice a week, or it's nightly, or whatever it is. We're as close to real time as possible. And so when people would come and ask me for that, once we had the portfolio view up, and I said, it's not real time because we don't have all of those analytics, but people are constantly updating it. So whenever you're looking at it, that is the most up-to-date version. It's like, I want to know that this is the plan of record. I said, that is the plan of record. I said, it might shift slightly when everybody updates, towards the end of the week of what they've been working on. Do you want me to require everyone to input daily on this? And then so every night, like, no. It's like, all right, well, then that is the latest, greatest. If you ask me where we are, I'll pull up the same dashboard that you can on the intranet. That's where we are. But that's another part of this too, is that you can have those live dashboards so that stakeholders can access updates every time. And I had that story that I shared a couple times in past episodes where nobody was looking at the dashboard. So I started sending out weekly emails and then following with people one-on-one and talking about the emails. Then they started reading the emails, and I was doing attachments to the emails and things, and having all this information out there, and they started relying on those. And then somebody had the great wisdom. They said, wouldn't it be great if we had all of this like in one central location?
What an idea.
Right. And so I didn't correct them that it's already been there and you weren't looking at them.
Let me go work real hard on that and get it ready for you.
Right. So like 2-3 days later, I did nothing. And then 2 days, 3 on that issue, 2-3 days later, I went back and said, hey, we have the dashboard out here. Here's the URL for it. I created a new shortened URL, sent it. Like, this is fantastic.
What a great idea, Christian. You're the best.
Well, the idea came clearly from that manager. So, yeah. But again, you empower them to go in, look it up themselves, answer those questions, make a place. I'm big on feedback loops so that they can ask questions, point things out. Hey, this is missing something. That's an important part of this. And then as quickly as possible, getting back to them. You requested this. Here's why we don't have that. Here's why it's not relevant. I can go gather this, but it's going to be a couple hours a week to go and gather. Like, okay, no. Once they see the impact, the cost.
But I know most project managers are really looking for things to do, Christian. So
yeah,
I'm sure that they don't mind spending all that extra time doing custom everything for everybody. I'm sure that, they're probably bored. So
yes.
I almost said that with a straight face.
Well, so long-term strategies. This goes back framework. Build a framework. It'll evolve over time. You can go leverage best practices from community out there, but if you have clear guidelines on when and how reporting should be requested, here's when we have like weekly. There's the updates. It's going in there, but we're yelling at everybody through the week to make sure by end of week, so that Monday morning, that is the latest, greatest going into Monday morning leadership team meetings. So if you build those expectations and push that across the groups, people then come to rely on that. And then it will become that, that the rock behind the PMO of, hey, this is it. This is the official
sounds a lot
record.
That sounds a lot like have a plan and a methodology.
Yes. And then communicate it. Right. And then be consistent. Right. As you said, other best practices, Sharon, besides, automation.
Yeah. I think it have a plan, have a methodology, communicate it, have feedback loops, all the same stuff that we say all the time, and then manage it, audit it
on a regular basis. Auditing, revisiting, and constantly refining, optimizing. That is all part of it. So make sure you build that overhead into your overall planning to at least, I would say, a quarterly basis. You can have the real-time stuff, but on a quarterly basis, you go back and you look at it. What changes do we make? What edits? What were the exceptions? Do we need to make changes? Is the model still working for us? Is anything else, any other factors change that we need to adjust this. It's not frequent enough. It's too frequent. It's just right.
That sounds like a postmortem or a retrospective.
Should be a book on that. Like if everything was, too much, too little, or just right. I mean, we should teach that to kids early on. Yeah. But any other like call to action? What would you tell people to go and do?
I mean, I think a lot of this is really just, and we said it over and over, but like, have a system that you follow, have a process that you follow. Don't do things for people just because they want it. You think about what is it that what problem are you trying to solve? What are you trying to deliver? How are they using the information? And also think about it holistically. This took me too long to figure out when I was young because I was, scoped into my project and my thing and my people. And when you look at it holistically, you start to realize that when you do that, you are part of the hot mess. So from a failure files perspective, I would say the call to action is realize that you are a part of a bigger whole. And that if you continue to do these kind of one-offs and do whatever anybody wants without looking at it holistically, you are just as much of the problem as the problem itself.
You made me think of that wise project leader that it's almost like he's the patron saint of project managers. I believe it was Mr. Jagger who said, you can't always get what you want. But we try and we try. All right. Yeah. Sorry, folks. Yeah. Try and make a little joke. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So yeah, I was going to throw like one last thing. It's to get started. I mean, you start by evaluating. You go in there and review. What do we have? What are the current reporting? Identify, hey, where can we consolidate? Where are the common denominators? And then to open up that dialogue and say, hey, look, we're now starting down this path. We're going to go and consolidate. We're going to build a centralized view. We're going to try and figure this out so you have one place to go through to get the high level and then dig into the details underneath each one of them so that leadership team has a broad view. You can see your projects that you own in perspective of everything else going on within the division and then have the conversations around the exception management process. But it starts with that, have that dialogue, be transparent about this process because that's one of the biggest failures you can make in trying to implement change is try to do it behind closed doors without that transparency. Be wide open about what you're attempting to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, that Sharon, I think we go along every week a little bit, but that's all right.
It was a hot mess. It took longer.
That's right. The hot mess takes a while to get organized, cleaned up, but if we missed something, if there's a nugget in there that you loved or that you hated, let us know. Reach out to us. We're on all the socials out there. Of course, you can find all the past episodes out on YouTube. You can find it under my profile. It's linked off of Sharon's profile as well. And then eventually there will be stuff in the site, but make sure you do go and sign up for the newsletter. Leave us a comment. Again, right now, like all it'll be once we get this underway, not too far away. Maybe it's already started. I don't know. No, it's not started, folks. But we're going to send out eventually. We're going to automate it. That will give you the summary of the previous week. And here's the topic for the next week. So that you don't miss any episode. So yeah, yay. Another episode down. And next Monday, maybe we'll get together, do it again. Maybe.
Every Monday.
What else are we going to do Monday mornings? Work? Do reporting? No. All right. See ya.
Bye.
I don't know if I want to know. I might want to break from knowing right now, but I'll get over it.